Okay. So, the evacuation procedure, I need to just say that, seeing as we are in here. So, plan of exits, as you can see there, on discovering a fire, please carry out the following: sound the alarm, tap the fire if possible, safe to do so using the appliance provided. On hearing the evacuate signal, please carry out the following: exit the building by your nearest safety exit, there, and all visitors report assembly point G, all staff report to their designated assembly point on Moor Pathway car park. Do not leave the assembly point for any reason until told to do so by the incident controller or fire brigade officer, and the officer in charge today must be Simon.
Hey?
Yes.
Agreed.
Well done. Thank you. Any apologies for absence? It looks like we've got a full house. I haven't got received any. Anything from your side, Jenny? No. Okay, brilliant. Okay, thank you. Welcome everyone. Good to see everybody here. Disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests. Any? Thank you. Public participation. Have we got anybody aware of any public questions? No. Thank you. Right, so we're on to the minutes of the board held on the 26th of July, and which you've got there. They're on page 5 for those of you that are trying to follow on a screen. Any questions or comments? Okay, so can I have a proposal to accept then? The minutes on, thank you, Councillor Jones, and seconded by Councillor Parker. All those in favour? Accepting? Any against? Right, those are carried, and I'll sign those at the end. Thank you very much. So we move on to the budgetary control report, which is on page 10. And you can see there where we are. Simon, have you got any introductory comments that you want to make on me? Or
To be fair, Chair, now that I've realised that I'm the senior officer here, I should be keeping all my comments short. And can I defer to Nigel from finance? Nigel might well.
Right, Nigel. Sorry, I wasn't ignoring it. Just referring to the senior officer.
I don't think there's really anything in addition to what's already in the report. Obviously, at the moment, we're looking at a reasonable, decent underspend.
Yes, yeah. Okay. Any comments or questions on that? Jodie?
Can we just ask for more clarity about what amenity cleaning is? Why doesn't understand why there's been such a vast reduction in the budget, and whether it's likely to continue or whether the longevity of it, what's caused it?
Okay, Chair. Yes, we haven't been fully employed. Some of the employees have been used on to support the refuse service short term. The service covers the litter picking, road sweeping.
Richard, have you got any comments on that?
To be fair, I think Nigel's absolutely spot on. We are running a couple of vacancies at the moment, and we are supporting our refuse recycling teams. They are very much under the pump at the moment, staffing wise. So that's the main reason for the savings that you see there. We are reviewing staffing levels across streets and grounds maintenance with an eye to seeing how we improve the situation going forward. But I must say that the teams still on the ground are doing an excellent job of keeping on top of things.
Sorry, I'll just put a follow-up to Jodie's question before I go on to Jeff, which is, it does include fly tipping clearing, doesn't it? Which we've had an increase in. So I'm wondering how we're managing if we haven't got all the staff.
It does, Chair. It does include fly tipping. Fly tipping is on the whole a dedicated crew, and they remain fully staffed. They're supported by the rural roads teams. We are running with smaller numbers on teams in a couple of locations, but they are managing to stay on top of things as much as they can. And fly tipping obviously is one of our priorities. It's one of the things that there's specific activity on, and we're making sure that we get to those as quickly as possible. We're still maintaining the clear rate of within 24 hours of being notified in almost all cases, Chair.
Oh, thank you. Jackie, sorry.
Thank you. It's a helpful paper in terms of the explanation, but whereas with the leisure facilities, it's quite clear that there's been some assessment of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the services and savings through the closure of these centres. The paragraphs which describe our underspend on refuse and recycling amenities and street scene make no comment, if you like, about the impact of the pandemic in terms of the workload that there's been on the teams. And I'm conscious in terms of, people using the footpaths and the pavements and, walking more dogs, if you like, that there has been additional pressures. And I just was curious that you haven't really reflected this in terms of the additional stresses that have been on these teams and what they felt in terms of the pressures of having vacancies or not. So I think it would be helpful, maybe not in this report, but to understand really how it's been in terms of keeping our villages and towns clean during this period, given that there's more people, more dogs, and potentially more, litter and offensive behaviours about.
Thank you. Richard, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt that the COVID pandemic has had an impact, particularly on refuse and recycling services. That the change in behaviour of people, with more people staying at home, working from home, has led to an increase in the amount of waste that we're collecting. You've mentioned the chair's mentioned the increase in fly tipping. Whether that's specifically linked to COVID or not is difficult to say, but there certainly has been an increase in fly tipping. And at the start of the pandemic, when we were doing far more in terms of social distancing, limited the number of people in the cabs of vehicles and that sort of thing, we did have to change the way that we were particularly carrying out things like street cleaning operations. So more localised bases, more cleaning from areas where we knew we got staff available, and a different sort of gearing up of how we were tackling cleaning in various areas. I'm more than happy, Chair, to come back to the next meeting of the board and give you some more sort of facts and figures on that, as well as some insight on what the crews experienced on the ground. More than happy to do that. And members will be aware, of course, that staffing pressures brought about by, particularly for refuse and recycling, by HGV driver shortages and general shortages, are having an impact as well, particularly on our refuse and recycling service. So we can touch on some of that as well, Chair. More than happy to do that.
I think that might be helpful, actually. We could combine the two in looking at how it was during the lockdowns and also seeing how far we're getting back to where it was pre-2020, and then how far the shortage of HGV drivers is impacting on your services. So we can put that down as a request, which I'll come to on the recommendation in a minute. Thank you both for that. Any more comments or questions? Okay, so just going to the recommendation then, we're asked to note and request any further information. So what I'm going to suggest is that we add to that recommendation that a report comes forward looking at the impact of the pandemic and the recovery or otherwise, and the impact of the shortage of HGV drivers. So thank you. Can I have a proposal for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Chambers, and seconded by Councillor Marion Humphries. Thank you. All those in favour? Any against? Right, thank you very much. That's carried. Thank you. So moving on then to item 7, which is the Leisure Facilities Service Improvement Plan. And you can see here lots of good work that's going on here in getting back to some sort of normality, and actually even better than normal, actually, in some cases. So I'm not sure who to turn to. I don't know whether it's Simon.
It's definitely Simon for everything.
Are you going to start, Sam?
Very briefly, Chair, yes. In actual fact, I can't see him. I'm slightly nervous, but I'm hoping that Russell is on the call. Well, if you can see him, I am relieved. Bless him, he's contracted COVID, but
Oh, dear.
he's still working as we would expect. So brief report, detailing activity through to August, but also making reference to a couple of things that were undertaken last month in September. So you've made reference to progress being made and encouraging return, further to a full return in July, particularly in respect of gymnastics and swimming and activity at QE. Slight concern about the slowing of health and fitness visits and DD membership numbers. Part of that is seasonal and is to be expected in August, but also one or two implications as a consequence of the difficulties at Polesworth. So we had no growth really in DDs in the month of August. The report makes reference to a couple of approved developments at Coleshill. That's positive, and we'll be undertaking the consultation regarding Christmas and New Year opening hours. And we'll come back to yourself and the Vice Chair and the Opposition spokesperson for suggesting any amendments there.
Thank you. So, comments and questions from anyone? Councillor Humphries, then Councillor Chambers.
Getting nowhere with my
It's all right. Speak up, Marina.
I'll just shout. Thank you, Chair. With the SEN activities within the for the special needs, can you tell me how that's been going? Has there been a take up on it?
Is that Russell? Russell, can you come in, please? Can you come in, Russell?
Hello, yeah. Through you, Chair, yeah. So there's been some groups using the pool. They've been booking out the pool each week to use the small pool to do some swimming regularly. And there's been a group using the gym at Coleshill that have started from Woodland School that come in each week to start to use the gym more. Other than that, I'm not sure if there's anything in addition to what we had before that's been added to the service, unless I've referred to it in the report.
Is it, sorry, thanks for that, Russell, but the way I've got it, that if somebody was receiving any special education facilities in their own school, they could approach the each individual sports facility and actually apply to you for extra activities. Did I read that wrong? Have they got to be coming from a school group?
No, so that's the Tackling Inequalities Fund, yeah. So we've had, so the Tackling Inequalities Fund covers a number of groups. So we had been talking to Think Active, who sort of supply the funding, and what we've done is we've tried to link with groups and clubs locally, and community development have done the same in terms of linking to clubs more wider within the community to offer that funding out for people to apply and to support them to achieve that. One of the groups that achieved that, but it was more around school meals funding, was Alliston Family Fun, who delivered some holiday activities in the summer at the Memorial Hall, and they had some very good attendance. But it's more been towards the funding to support other groups to approach us to secure funding for them to deliver activities.
So I did get the wrong end of the stick. I actually thought it was to help parents so as they could bring their children along for activities within the sports clubs, and it was funded by the sports clubs. So can I speak to you on a one-to-one about that? Because I'm quite confused about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
of course, yeah.
Thanks very much.
If I could just ask the Russell, how far can we accommodate children with various needs within our normal children's activities and our facilities?
Yeah, quite well. I mean, in terms of just general activities, if people want to come and use the gym, they can come to the gym. If they need to come with a carer, for example, the carer can go to the gym for free and can be in there to support them. That's similar for swimming and all other activities that we do. And in terms of things that we provide specifically for groups, that's what we're looking to do. We're looking more to network with communities to get more groups in. That's like the swimming and the school booking I was talking about, and eventually look at how we can sort of deliver those ourselves to train our staff up or to recruit people with the qualifications to do that better.
Oh, thanks very much. Thank you. Councillor Jackie.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't know that was my phone going off.
It's tested twice again.
I just wanted to, along with the remarks that you made, Chairman, about the splendid work that's been going on during this difficult period. And I mean, I think, Russell, you've done an amazing amount in terms of leadership and innovation that's reflected in this report and is clearly having its impact. And I was just going to ask really whether there were any prizes that we could go for as a borough council, you know, in terms of this area of work that there must be around, because I think a lot of the things that, you know, you've led on and have introduced during this period really are, I think, something to celebrate, and you really ought to get recognition, as indeed did the borough council and the team that's you know, been around you and supporting you, and Simon and Becky and so on in relation to all of that. So it was just a sort of thing. If there are prizes, please will you give him time out to apply for those kinds of prizes, so we can have a little plaque or something up in the wherever they get shown now. So that was my first thing. The second thing is, I mean, I love the idea of tea dances being replaced by Strictly Dancing. We've got in Old Dordon Village Hall, there's loads of pictures of old tea dances as well as old councillors dotted around. And in the terms of the promotion, the only question I've got is whether you have got enough support of pushing these things through social media. I know that Marion and so on pushes things out for councillors themselves to use as our local community pages in social media. But I just wondered whether that sort of you can reach out whenever you want to promote something new and know that it will go out to all pages that we have on social media. I'm talking about Facebook. That's the only social media page I really know about. But it's just you know, making sure that we're making the maximum of all the opportunities that you're creating for our residents, and the networks that operate through social media of children, their adults and families are able to find out through that route.
Yeah. You want to comment, Russell, on communication?
Yeah. I mean, for social media, I think they've gone on local groups. They've probably not gone on every local group, or possibly not the range that we could cover. So, yeah, I'll look into how we can sort of push that out wider. But also, if any of the councillors, or if anyone knows any of the people that are good to contact to put things in local areas, that would help as well. That'd be appreciated. Aside from that, we could do a small paid campaign on social media, boost posts that could increase the reach as well for a short period of time if we wanted to. I'll look into that.
Sorry, Chair, can I come back? Because I think Russell was, in a sense, answering a question as though I was expecting him to do that, whereas what I was asking was, around you in the Borough Council, are there enough people working with social media community sites that you can reach out? I mean, there used to be a lady called Helen Toms, was that her name? Who always used to push out information from the Borough Council, but she's not done as much as I've noticed anyway. On you know, you need constant kind of almost daily updates, don't you, for the week that something's launched, in order to keep those pages refreshed. And I just wondered whether you felt, you may not want to answer that, or really it's a question for Simon, can we make sure that Russell has got enough support around him that he can just turn to and say, please promote that, and it will go out, you know, through the social media channels that they're on. I don't just mean publishing it on the North Warwickshire face page, Warwick Council face page and website. I mean all the networks that we have in terms of those community pages, which I know Helen, what was that her name? Helen Tom? Yeah, she used to do. Is she still around? Or?
She is. Through you, Chair, Helen is still about, but she's less involved in work through the internal comms team. But we do get good support from that small internal comms team. But to be fair to them, they're only as good as the information that we give them in the first place. They can't mind read what we're up to, and sometimes we're running so quickly that occasionally we do forget to tell them about activity that they could help us promote with. So we will make a conscious note of that. But we do get that internal support. It is there. And the other thing that think that we need to get back into, we used to put quite regular emails round to members and internal colleagues and get them to put it out. and we probably haven't done that over the last 6 or 9 months. So we'll get back into that as well.
That would be really useful. I know all councillors are linked in to their Facebook pages, but also, if it's printable, they can put notices up on, in parish councils and stuff. So that's lots of ways to get things out there. That's great. And don't forget Jackie's comments about trying to get some recognition for the great, and it has been fantastic work that's been done. So,
Never going to hear the end of this now.
No. You just got to say, in fact, that things have not only bounced back, but they bounced back better in lots of ways. So well done to the team. Sorry, Marion.
Just one thing, Russell, I saw here that you're having a little bit of trouble relating with the schools again about trying to get work experience started. I know it's been difficult with the schools because they've had a lot on, but I think work experience is something that we need to look into. If you're having any trouble, I'm willing to help you with Polesworth School, and I'm sure other councillors would help with schools in their areas. So please let us know. I know my co-councillor over there would be willing to help with Polesworth School as well, because I think it's very important for our young children to know what's going on and what's available to them. And if we can support you in doing this, then please let us know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think next year it'll be fine. It's just that normally work experience comes around the summertime, doesn't it? Just before the holidays. And this time round, that was right in the thick of the uncertainty of the pandemic. So I think come next year, we'll probably get lots of schools requesting, and we normally get more requests than we've got places for, so that's an issue for us to look at, how many can we accommodate. But yeah, thank you. If they're not forthcoming, then definitely I'll come to you for support and see where we're at.
Let us know.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Oh, sorry.
It's only a quick one. Just to follow up, we had a meeting recently with the police in Arley, and they were discussing the success of the Atherstone Boxing Club. And I know that that's been a kind of joint adventure, and I just wondered how. We've talked a lot in the past about actual bringing facilities to communities rather than communities to facilities, as it were. And I just wondered whether there was any scope in that being rolled out as a kind of distance thing in community.
So is that in your area, Russell?
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely get in touch with them and see if it's something that they could get in. Do any link-up work with, or if we can support them to get out more into the community. Yeah, I'll put that down as an option to do, and I'll make sure we get in touch. Is there anything from your end, Becky, to add to that, or are you happy with that?
So through you, Chair, so the boxing was established through the police, so that's something that we can have those discussions. But I know that they're looking at making it more of a standalone club and moving it away from just being kind of police-led, because I know the officers are struggling, spending their time coaching and then obviously being on the beat and stuff. But it is something that we were looking at when we've got green space officers in terms of using the green spaces and linking with Russell's instructors. So it's something that we'll definitely take forward.
I understand the police wanting to perhaps take a step back in terms of being so involved, but the fact that they were instrumental in that because of issues, it was there specifically to address issues, and it's been successful. And therefore, if there are issues, for example, in Arley or lots of places where we've got issues, not just with the police's advice, it might be worth looking to see if it's possible to establish facilities using whatever's available, basically, as resources. Yes.
And I think that's one of the reasons that they are able to step back a little bit, is because it was so successful and they've got that buy-in from local people and the young people that are attending. So it's kind of a credit to them, but we can definitely look at moving that forward. They've got really strong links with Evan from our team. So
good. We can fantastic. Sorry, Jackie, did you?
No, it's okay.
Yes, so that's really something to go forward. Judy?
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to echo the praise for the way the services have had an increased uptake since the lockdown was stopped. But just a point from the health and wellbeing minutes, really, Russell, we were talking about possibly looking at what services there could be for people who are really deconditioned during lockdown and really were coming into leisure at an entry level. Is there anything in place or planned with people who previously weren't doing much exercise?
I think some things that we touched on in the working party. For classes, we've looked at highlighting classes that we've sort of put as active living classes, which are classes that are set for anyone to take part in, but they're a slightly lower intensity than some of the other classes, so they might be easier for someone that's starting exercise. So one of my colleagues that works looking after health and fitness will be focusing over the next sort of a couple of months on how we can sort of create a campaign around that to make it a more friendly entrance to exercise. And then around exercise referral, and social prescription. So it's returned well and successfully so far, but the plan over the second half of the year that we'd put down on the service improvement plan was to look at from then, so from now for the next half of the year, how we can link with exercise referral and social prescribers to feed into schemes that aren't just gym based, but so that our exercise referral specialists can feed into bowls or strictly dancing or walking football or some other activities. And so we're going to start off looking at that within our own internal services, and then we will be looking to link with other partners externally to see if they're interested in being signposted by either our referral specialists or by social prescribers. So they're two things that we're looking at to try and improve that. Within the gym, we're revisiting the member journey for exercise referral and also for other areas to see how we can reinvent ourselves in that way. And so it might be that part of the member journey, once it's reassessed and completed, there might be something that we promote that gives an option for entrance for people that are beginning as well.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, so if we go to the recommendation, we are first of all asked to note and comment, which I think we've done. The second part is about the openings for Christmas and New Year, and that is that the authority be delegated to the Director of Leisure and Community Development in consultation with the Chairman, Vice Chairman and Opposition spokesperson for the Board to amend the Christmas New Year opening hours of the leisure facilities, subject to there being no significant adverse implications for levels of community use of the centres. There's going to be a survey of our members to see what they would prefer, and that was to delegate the decision for those people mentioned. Have I got a proposer for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Chambers. A seconder? Councillor Gosling. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Thank you very much. So to move on to item 8, on page 38, it's the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Celebration Grant Scheme. So I know that this is something that Becky's been working on. So do you want to say a few words on it?
And not on Simon. Not anything further than in the report. This is based on offering grants to celebrate the Queen's Jubilee. So there's two options: the £500 and the £100. And then it also talks about the option to do a little bit of tree planting as part of the Queen's Jubilee, the canopy. Sorry.
Thank you. Yes, it isn't a large amount of money, but we need to I know there's lots of work going on across the whole borough from parish councils and various community groups looking at what they're going to do for the Jubilee. So this is just a little bit of help if people need it. So you can see the things set out there. The only, so it's basically for each ward there'll be an amount of money for each ward, and then if it's the parish council, will be expected to match them. The thing at the end is about just in terms of the Queen's Green Canopy programme, is just the idea of just planting 3 trees, one in each town. Obviously, there will be lots of tree planting going on, I think, because you can get your free saplings from the Woodlands Trust. You want to take part in this, but so if there's no comments or questions, thank you.
There was a couple of queries, one of which is something that comes up quite often, whenever there's something per ward, and obviously I think Arley is now nearly twice the size of Kirkland, and yet we've got 3 parish councils rather than 1, and yet we have the same allocations, and that always feels a little bit unfair, especially when we're having to then divide that between 3 parishes and things. So it's not like we have one overseeing parish council that we can say, right, here's 1,000, let's match it and get to work. It becomes a lot more complicated, and I don't think that's really ever considered. And it's something that's kind of come up before. And then we were kind of just looking at the proposals. Is it £17,000 shared across the wall, so £1,000 per wall? And so in our situation, that would become £300 per parish as well.
Yeah, so through you, Chair, we've allocated per ward because it was easier to separate out, but we've not taken into consideration the amount of parish councils.
Okay.
So it's just, I'll say it isn't it's not a great deal of money, but it's just to sort of edge people along to help them. So I do take your point though, Jenny. I think it's obviously
I think
the size is
we
there.
all know double, some of the other wards. So, and we've obviously got an additional council as well. It's recognised, but we don't always get them.
Okay. So we're just accepting that for the moment, that it's just been done the easy way, if you like, between the wards. Councillor Chambers.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lovely, joining in with this important event. I just wondered whether there was any learning from previous occasions in which the Borough Council has sponsored something like this in terms of engagement with groups, and because there's not long now between, where we are now, October, and the actual date in 2022 in June. And I noticed that you've got some sort of packs. Is that right, Becky? That you're developing for parish and town councils and community organisations. I just wondered what time frame is for getting those out. Just one comment in terms of the match funding. I mean, some wards like mine have already spent their one-off growth allocation. Because we thought we had to finish by end of March. And so drawing on a matched funding from parishes that, are already stretched might be more difficult in those wards that basically move fast to get their money spent, because we thought we were working up a deadline against those that are still underspent and thinking that they've got a whole year to spend the rest of it. So it just feels, I mean, is there going to be any flexibility around this match funding if we can illustrate that, it's going to be difficult to match fund? And then my only other comment in terms of planting 1 tree per town, which is something that our group said, is that it's often quite difficult to find a suitable piece of land. And I wondered whether buying into some of the Woodland Trust's new plantation areas that are also being planted or are currently growing, like the one in Queen's Jubilee Wood, that having a sort of section of land that we've helped to buy some planting in and secure the future of the Woodland Trust might be another way of using this funding that might be more both resilient and sustainable in terms of the long term and more contribution to zero carbon reduction than just 1 tree per town. It sounds like a sort of symbolic thing to do, but the reality of using this public money in that way and the benefits, I just wonder whether planting some hedges in a woodland that's already growing and taking kids out there to show families with their photographs as they do in that particular Queen's Jubilee Wood, where they grow up with the tree and take stages of them growing along with the tree. It just feels a bit odd really to put 1 tree per town and to feel that it's a worthwhile way of spending.
I think the idea was that we wanted something permanent, because obviously we're giving money. So it was something that, with a plaque that says this is the tree that was built, Platinum Jubilee and all that, a bit more than a sapling, something substantial, I think is what the idea was. So that's where it came from. So just to explain, sorry, Hayden.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to develop Jackie's point, I don't want to mean it to sound cynical, but I think you know, I'm all in favour of planting as many trees as we possibly can. But you know, we had a nice, lovely cherry tree planted in the village for the Jubilee, and along came the developers, and it disappears. And this was the in some years ago, and we put a tree in the village hall area for to celebrate or recognise the end of the First World War, and that's got knocked about a few times by, especially the I don't want to be too critical, but the grass cutter people seem to take a liking to using it as the hairpin on their journey. It's just, I think, just finding somewhere to put it where it's going to be permanent and got permission. You know, I mean, you don't want to just turn up on somebody's land and say, well, we're going to put it here or on a village hall area, but yeah, where people might have it earmarked for a car park or something like that. That's my only concern is I say, putting it somewhere where it is going to be permanent, somewhere it's going to last, and somewhere it can be looked after. And it is a problem. And although we've got large amounts of land in the area, in the borough, it's not that easy just to find somewhere to put a tree that's going to be protected and looked after, I think.
I think that's a really good point, Hayden. I think what I might suggest, sorry, Simon.
Sorry, Chair, but just through you, I mean, if the board's happy, we can pick this issue up with the 3 town councils or the 2 town councils, or the parish council, and have conversations with them about the most appropriate way to use that resource locally to make sure it's a legitimate contribution to tree planting in the environment and the sort of stuff. If the board is happy, we can pick that up.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that maybe Chair, Vice Chair and spokesperson could agree with the relevant borough councillors for the area exactly what the position and what type of tree, and whether it's got railings around and a plaque and all that sort of thing. The details we could sort out offline. So just if we could agree in principle, and we'll sort it out and take Aidan's points into account, that would be really helpful. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, just one other point on Councillor Chambers' comment about match funding. One thing that this report doesn't say is that the Borough Council really and ordinarily would only grant a project or an activity or event from one source of funding. Therefore, you wouldn't be able to use this Queen's Platinum Jubilee Fund and the local community fund and that sort of thing, because it's 2 separate sources of Borough Council funding. So what we were referring to was the Parish Council's own resource to match funding from there. Apologies for not making it clear in the report.
Thank you. Right, okay, thank you. So if we could just look at the recommendation then, the board approves the use of the monies from the one-off growth fund to provide celebratory Queen's Platinum Jubilee grants in the manner identified in the report, also taking into account the final agreement on the 3 trees will be through the Chair, Vice Chair, spokesperson and relevant borough councillors. With that, I'll propose that from the Chair, seconded Councillor Parker. Those in favour, please. Against? Hopefully that's carried. Thank you very much. So, item number 9 is the North Warwickshire Green Space and Plain Strategies, and that's on page 42. So, Sam, do you want to just introduce it, or
Just very, very briefly, Chair. This is an area of activity where we're trying to make progress, but we're trying to make that without a green space officer and without a green space officer trees at the moment. And you know, there are 1 or 2 important undertakings in this report where we've been able to move things forward. Not least Atherstone Sports Club and its request for a 30-year lease down at Raw Meadow Drive Recreation Ground, or for a part of the recreation ground. And this board is asked to comment on the principle of that. It'll ultimately be determined by the Resources Board on the 8th of November. Progress at Boot Hill Recreation Ground, that's now been approved through the Resources Board. You can read what we've said about the risk assessment and recreation grounds, and we can do some work there to protect those sites from unwanted incursions. But can I just make it clear that even if we do all this work, it's no guarantee that we're not going to have incursions. I have to say that every time. There's reference obviously to the player development programme, and it's respected that we're struggling, for instance, at Anderson Common for the funding for the pump track there, so we've highlighted that. And then the request from Shuttington Parish Council to enter into a licence for the use of some borough council amenity grassland so that it can develop a wildflower meadow. So some important undertakings, but undertaken without any resource. So obviously it's all down to Russell. So
Oh my God.
Thank you. Members, any comments and questions on this?
You're welcome.
I may place some ignorance here because I'm a new member to the board, so forgive me. But one of the main concerns when I read this report, there was lots of detail about the Addiston Sports Club. And what struck me as a very complex sort of set of projects that link up with each other. And it's about our level of confidence that actually it is deliverable by the sports club. And in a way that connects to, you know, the degree to which we'll monitor it. And if it does look at all precarious, will we have a role in supporting the Addiston Sports Club to secure the success of the project? Because I think it's got so much going for it. It's really positive. But it does strike me that this is complex, even for the council to take this on. It would involve a lot of project planning, project monitoring, and potentially training, risk analysis, that sort of thing. Have we got confidence that the sports club could do this? That's the first question. And are we in a position to give them the support that they might need should we find that they're struggling?
Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Level of confidence. I have to be fair to Addiston Sports Club. If nothing else, it's got some deep-seated resolve. It's been at this for a considerable number of years, for the last 8 or 9 years. And I have to say, throughout that process, they've worked extremely closely with the authority, with officers, and with members. They've kept them on board throughout that. So if anybody can deliver it, then Addiston Sports Club can deliver it. And you know, people change, personnel change. But you know, your own chairman can comment on the professionalism within the meetings that we have with them and the way that they're undertaking this task. And even for them to sit down and produce 15-year development plans, but then they don't think that's done. They go back and they review it and they change it and all that sort of stuff. They've undertaken this as thoroughly as anybody could do. And you know, just to re-emphasise a point that I already made, that they work extremely closely with the council, and you know, they also work extremely closely with the local community and things like that. So we're in there, we're supporting them. We can't do everything for them, but that relationship and partnership is as close as it reasonably could be, to be fair.
Thanks, Chair. That's very reassuring. Thank you.
And of course, one of the major advantages is that they, particularly with the lease, are able to access funding that we can't access, and they can develop in a way that we couldn't afford to do. Certainly, as Sam said, I've been to meetings with them and I've been very impressed with the various aspects of the club. They do hockey and rugby and football and cricket and etc., etc. And each of the leaders of those sports are really keen and enthusiastic to develop, particularly the youth aspect. So I think that it's so promising to the whole borough. Obviously, it's based in Anderson, but drawing people from across the borough. And certainly, from the meetings I've had, I've got confidence that Simon obviously deals with them in detail. Sorry, was it you, Jackie? Sorry.
Yes, I just want to follow on from Anne's questions about this. I've obviously been more involved in the past in terms of the tenancy at will agreement, visiting the site, understanding from Evan what support they've been drawing on. But I think Anne's point is that when you've got so many different strands, which include new club facilities, developing new pitches from scratch, and ensuring that they are fully used and that there's maintenance that covers all of that. That what we've got is just over a year's worth of testing that tenancy. And so far, the fairly simple things like demolition of the skateboard and construction of a bridge, resurfacing or putting down topsoil and seeding are fairly small things that, if it's running on volunteers, however enthusiastic and keen they all are, the management structure to deliver the next stage of their business plan, given that this is a 30-year lease and it's the release of an important public asset. I think my question is, what is the management structure? How resilient is it? How well is that and all the other things that sit under that umbrella of the Addiston Sports Club working in terms of the individual sports that it's supporting as a management entity? And at what point are they going to move towards proper project management, full-time officer, or at least half-time office support, and perhaps over a 3-year basis, to take this to another stage of rolling out the development plan? So I think it is an important point. I mean, although there is funding available for capital investment, securing funding for staff to support this kind of thing to take forward is a much more difficult thing to find sources for. And I'm not convinced from the sort of action plan that we've been given and the detail of that is in their sights as a need for some kind of revenue support to the development plan to enable us to be confident this 30-year lease is not going to have considerable risks for all of us in terms of taking it forward.
I just ask Simon what the risks are to the authority should the plans not develop in the way that it's foreseen.
Through you, Chair, I think that would depend at what point the project realised it had got some struggles. Can I just go back just slightly and deal with Jackie's point first about the management structure that's there? Each of the constituent clubs is very successful in its own right, and it's one thing to run an awful lot of football teams or an awful lot of rugby teams or cricket or whatever your sport is, but they all run successfully in their own right. I would be lying to you, and I know who's in the gallery, I would be lying to you if I said that occasionally they haven't struggled to bring Addiston Sports Club together and get on the right page and that sort of stuff. They have, but they've worked their way through that over a period of time to make sure that the overarching structure of Addiston Sports Club is there, is solid, is well rooted from that point of view. And I am confident that they're all pulling in the right direction. I also know that within their membership and actively engaged in this because of the meetings that we've had, that they've got project management support, they've got finance support and finance managers involved in this. They've got architects who are helping them and supporting them get these programmes together. Clearly, from our point of view, from a Borough Council point of view, there are risks associated with it. Of course they are. And it's risk assessed through our processes to make sure that they are manageable. It's the reason why Evan is heavily engaged with them on an ongoing basis to make sure that the plans are rooted, that they're realistic, that their funding proposals, both capital and revenue, are realistic. There are regular meetings held to make sure that that is the case. And again, the report makes reference to the fact that not everything is going to go smoothly, and some of the pitch renovation works that they've been doing recently became a problem because of the contractor that they appointed. But they didn't come knocking on our door to sort that problem out. They resolved it themselves through their own fundraising. They've now appointed another contractor to get it in. They're used to helping themselves and to actually realising their own development plan because they're committed to it. And I have to say fair play to them from that point of view.
Jo, could I come back then really in terms of the overall management of this venture? And it may be too early to say what might be expected from our point of view, but I my understanding that in other examples where this has been successfully done, I'm thinking of Hurley, that a member has been involved at some point in the steering arrangements of that transition. And I just wonder whether or not we ought to be asking for that so that we can keep a close eye and understand what support as well as challenges lie ahead for both parties. And now that clearly isn't a true partnership arrangement, but it is about keeping a foot in across, if you like, to the use of this public asset and making sure that the handover has gone smoothly.
Well, I'll put my view forward first. I mean, I'm not sure which of our members has got professional or even experience in running sports clubs. And I'm not sure that the people who are trying to run Elveston sports clubs would welcome somebody there who hasn't got the experience that they need. You know, what are we going to add, to be honest? They're the people with the experience. They're the people who've done it so far. We have officers who are qualified in doing this, who are keeping in contact with them and are having regular meetings with them. And they're our touch point through the officers, which is the normal way that we do things. So,
Chair, if I may, I mean, you're quite right in terms of the operational management and not interfering with the way in which that's taken forward. But there is also a governance, presumably arrangement for handling the cash and the spend and the relationships with the other clubs that sit alongside of that. This is, as I understand it, a charity, so it will have a board of trustees, and it was just a question of some kind of co-trustee arrangement, if you like, to make sure that the governance is in place.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Godwin?
Thanks. I just want to add to everything that's been said so far and say I think we obviously support this. It's a fantastic project. And I think that our concerns are around making sure that it's successful so that it can provide everything that it promises to the local people and for the club to be successful. And I think it should be a really positive partnership, but we do obviously have to be careful to make sure that any risk is mitigated and any problems will work through together.
David Humphries.
Thanks very much for letting me speak. I'm not a member of the committee. I actually think this club's a generational club. It's had a success for decades. I've lived here 35 years, and that club's gone on, and I've been so impressed with what they've done. They've managed to do it themselves. They fell over now and then, but they haven't fell over to the extent like Atherstone Town football clubs have to fell over. Where the Atherstone Town has needed to be handheld for generations as well. This club has got, and I've been there recently. There was a football boys and girls games taken place. 400 children were there. It was full, and there were grandparents that used to be boys that played there. It's been generational. The town and the area will not let this fall over. Those people sat in the back there, I've got every respect for them because they've managed they keep this club going. And if you go down there and get there and when they're playing a game and get in the bar and you listen to what they're doing, it's their life and soul for some of these people. And being keen and doesn't make you necessarily effective. They've got 30 years, to my knowledge, of effectiveness, making that work and get better and better. And I can't personally see how, they've done it for 30 years without us, effectively, with our finger on the button. Why do we need to do that? They've managed to do it themselves. And I would say, I'll applaud you. Well done. Everything you've actually done, and especially since you've had at will, I think it's the best thing that ever happened. And the things that you've done down there this summer and in the gaps between what's happened with COVID and prior to that, it's been absolutely wonderful. It's been a complete community environment, and I would support it, although I can't vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments on that, or indeed anything else on this item? Councillor Humphries and Councillor Jones.
Okay, still won't work. I'll just shout. I would just like to say about the Newton Regis and Wharton, that for the green space at Shuttington, please. I have many hours spent on this. Shutting, please let it go through. This is a green space project from Shuttington. They want to turn one of the areas for, and it is going in Milner Drive. It's going to be an area where there's going to be a pond which has a great big rid over it, so as it's safe for the children. There's going to be wildflowers. There's going to be sitting area, reflection area. It's taken since January of this year to actually for the project to come to fruition. It's just been a little bit of a hiccup with a license, which we're hoping is now sorted and signed off. And if everybody's in agreement, please let it be signed off and go through tonight, because the village has really worked hard with our officers, I must say. Becky has been on the phone a lot, so please, it's a wonderful project. The villagers I've been at a coffee morning this morning, and this has been the height of the conversation, because they knew this was coming through tonight. They're all very enthusiastic, and there's about 30 people within the village who are the main people, so you can imagine the conversation. And then there's supporters on that are going to be helping as well. So I support this wholeheartedly. So
thank you. Actually, Councillor Jens.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to tree management, Simon made reference to the lack of a couple of officers. I just wondered where we are in replacing Andrew Watkins as the tree officer.
Through you, Chair, we've been out seeking to recruit on 2 occasions. We almost made an appointment on one of those, but didn't. The second time round, we had no applicants at all. So we're currently undertaking a review again and looking at the possibility of some closer working with the county, but we'll keep the board informed as to where we're at, because we know how crucial this particular area of activity is.
Is it, when you went out the second time, have you increased the offer, as it were?
Through you, Chair, no, we have to go out twice before we can ask for a market supplement. So we have now been out twice.
Okay, I get the message, and I think this is one of many posts in your area that we may need to do a general review, and I think you did get some support from that in a resources board.
Yeah, through you, Chair, it was picked up at special sub, and so I think it was a specific action required of special sub, but corporately, not just my own division. There are other divisions that are struggling as well.
And I think it's something that we just need to look at, because we can't keep holding these posts vacant. They're important, the green space officer and other posts in your area. So thanks, Councillor Jones, for bringing that forward. So perhaps you could keep us informed then, Simon, on where we are.
I will do, Chair.
Any other comments? Sorry, keep turning on. Any other comment? Questions? Right. Okay. So we could go back to the recommendation then. So we asked a note of comment on the progress of the green space strategy, which the board considered the comments on the principle of the Borough Council entering into a long-term lease for the Ayleston Sports Club, through which it could assume responsibility for the management and maintenance of part of Royal Meadow Drive Recreation Ground, prior to consideration of this matter at a future meeting of the Resources Board. So this will be our recommendation to the Resources Board. And the third one is Councillor Humphreys, green space and with wildflowers, etc. on Shuttington. So can I have a proposer for that, please? Councillor Smith, and seconder Councillor Humphreys. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. So move on to item 10, which is the Rockingham Wellbeing Action Plan, which you've got there, page 74. And it's set out there. I don't know if the officers want to make any comments, otherwise I'll just take questions and comments on this, please.
It's a question that, because I haven't personally heard of the Indigo project before, which I understand is a voluntary transport project, offering transport facilities. And it says to sort of numerous villages. I'm unaware of it. And I'll put that down to my personal circumstances during COVID, in which I've not ventured out much for the last 18 months. So forgive me if I'm displaying my ignorance again. But I just wondered if somebody could update us on how that's going and how materially it operates and people get in touch to use it.
Thank you. Is it you, Ben?
Yeah, I think we agreed beforehand that I wouldn't give Simon. Yeah, so it's a through you, Chair. So that's a county council scheme, and in terms of an update, if it's okay, I'll go back and get a proper update from the localities team before we can give that information.
Can you just say where it runs? Because there's two in operation. There's one round Addiston. I think the other one's, is it Colesfield?
Colesfield,
Yeah. Colesfield, yes. And I'm not sure which the Indigo one is. There's two. One's got a different name.
I think the Indigo is Colesfield.
Sorry.
I think the Indigo is Colesfield.
Oh, thank you. The Indigo one's Colesfield. So it looks like what we need, I think this is really, thank you for bringing this forward. We need, I think we need a report on this scheme. I do know that there was going to be, it started just before the lockdown started, and there was going to be a review to see how it was going and whether it was successful, and if it was, is it going to be expanded, etc. But of course, you weren't the only one staying in during the lockdown, so it hasn't really been used in the way it was expected. Hopefully things are getting back to this sort of normality. So if we could just ask for a report to come forward, that would be great. We can all learn a bit from that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Just comment on the Indigo. My understanding is it's not quite achieving what they ideally wanted it to achieve, so we're quite interested to see that. But I actually wanted to comment on item 4.2, which is the teenage conceptions. And obviously very concerning that it's risen again. You'll know that in both of our wards, teenage conception is a huge issue with some of the highest portions. And again, it's getting that community and spreading the learning really. So if we've got it in Atherstone Health Store and in Poleswood, that's fantastic. But we do need to pull that down and target the areas where the cases are much higher and much more prevalent. There's been huge cuts at the moment with health visitors and within the health visiting team for parents, for young parents. And I'm very concerned about the implications of raising numbers of teenage conceptions whilst we're having huge cuts to the services that actually support them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll bring Councillor Marion Hundreds in a minute. I think you'll find, though, Jodie, that even the what's down here isn't working in the way that it was. So the health store in Addiston is not what it was. It's been moved from the Ratcliffe Centre to the clinical centre next to the library, the health centre next to the library, and it's something that we are bringing up. Marion, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to reiterate what you were just saying, that we're very disappointed that the health store's been moved in the way that it had. It was a very good club before when we had it running, where we had the youth workers, we had the homeless just worker in there. We actually had a worker where she would just talk to anybody that walked in. They could talk about any abuse. Anything that walked in the door, they were able to deal with. Now it's been made clinical and we are in uproar. They gave us no warning about it. They just moved them out. Each time we meet with them, or even when we're not meeting with them, we're fighting to have that back. We're fighting to have not in the clinic. We don't want it in the clinic. We want to have it in an informal situation where they can walk in. They can talk to people and they know that they've got that privacy. Where the clinic is, it's open to everybody to see who's walking in and out, because it's near the swimming pool, it's near the library, it's open. Where it was before, they could just be going for a walk and then they could just walk down the Ratcliffe Road and they could walk into the clinic. So we were told that that is what they want. That is what they're filling in the survey to say they want to go to the George Eliot. The people that are going to the George Eliot might be saying that's what they want to do, but they're not asking the actual people that can't get to the George Eliot, that can't get the transport, that live in the rural areas, or actually don't want to speak to the people at the George Eliot. So we are really fighting to get it back. And we're really angry that they didn't even talk to us. And I'm, as you can imagine, quite vocal about the fact at county that we are not happy. And so is Chair, that, you know, it's something that it was our resource that they took away. So, no, we're not letting it ride. We are on it all the time, and we will keep you posted as to what's going on.
Yeah, and we did provide funding as well. We were providing funding, which we're still providing,
Yeah.
and it's not happening. So I think from that, it's really important. It's probably one of the most important things on this, that you know, to get this back in our area, working effectively.
Yeah.
Both Marion and I will be talking at county, but I will also formally ask our Health and Wellbeing Working Party to take this up and keep pushing it from that end as well. So that's two-pronged approach that we'll do, and I know Becky will work with us on that. So thank you for raising it. Any others? Any other points?
Could I just pick up, Chair, the question of walking and footpaths?
Yeah.
Which are part of the action plan. And there has been quite a lot in various postings on, you know, communications with members and on social media about the deadline, which is approaching. It seems a long way off, of 2026, whereby all designated rights of way have to be reinstated and highlighted. And I'm aware that we were all asked by the county council to give feedback about our footpaths, and many of us did in some detail, to talk about these rights of way. I just wonder whether this action plan that talks about promoting walking through promotional material, whether we need to revisit this in the Health and Wellbeing group about how we engage and get the ramblers and everybody else that walks our footpaths, making sure that by 2026 we haven't lost any of our rights of way, which have clearly been very historic. But if we don't get these reinstated or highlighted and logged and registered by 2026, then we will lose them. And I think it's very important that, you know, that infrastructure remains there and we don't lose anything.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Good idea.
That's another recommendation to the Health and Wellbeing Working Group. Judy?
Yes, Chair. I've just nodded to Becky saying.
Thank you. Right, okay, there's no more comments then. So just going back to the recommendation, which we're asking about the comment if you have. So the things that we're going to recommend is, first of all, that there's a report back on these buses, which are a dialer bus, is whatever the generic term is for these buses. And secondly, that the Health and Wellbeing Working Party take up the issue of the teenage pregnancy support and the issue about ensuring that the walking routes are registered by 2026. That's a formal government thing that you have to do. Okay, we've got a proposer, Marion Mears, seconder, and Judy MacDonald. Those in favour? Against? Thank you very much. It's carried. So the next item, item 11 on page 88, is the Health and Working Party minutes. Health and Wellbeing Working Party minutes. So, Judy, over to you.
Thank you. I just ask that the minutes be noted by members. At our last meeting on the 16th of September, Councillor Humphreys had asked for some more information from the county about funding for waterways and paths. It all links into the promotion of walking, so all people will choose to walk along the towpaths and so on, and there are various issues. So we're just trying to source more information on that. We've already talked about social prescribing, and again, that's a topic that we discussed. And again, I've referred to the leisure facilities and so on, and early entry exercise and so on. I don't know whether there are any questions.
just for your information, the county are just publishing their canals strategy, I think it's called. And it recognises the use of that for walking and cycling. So it might be worth getting hold of. I think the document's been published. Sorry, Maureen.
Sorry, through you, Chair. I was in a meeting the other day where we were talking about the canal strategy, and I said how much was available because we had quite a problem our way in for our canals, because a lot of our boat moorings, that's it, are actually across the pathway. And so it could be a lot of money to actually get them on the side of the boats in the water. And they said they might not be enough to do all of that. But I've actually started shouting for some money to come our way, because you can't have everybody walking along the path, cycling along the path, and then you knock them off because your boat's full. So I have started to talk about our cycling and walking paths, but moorings in the way. So I'm on it.
I was just going to ask if there's any more detail about, obviously air quality comes up a couple of times in item 3 of the climate change and 4. Just wondering if there's any more details or anything that's come forward that you can add.
At the last meeting, the connection with Matthew was really poor. It was really difficult to hear. And so there was very little update, and he'll be presenting to us at our next meeting.
Could I just come in on that? It was difficult to hear, but what we did hear in terms of actual air quality was that 2019 did throw up, which was the last official report that's gone into DEFRA from our borough, did throw up, I think it was at least 2 hotspots, which are of concern, but DEFRA's response was that you needed to wait 3 years before declaring these areas as in need of remedial action. Obviously 2020 has been a completely different and unusual year, which will be very difficult then to adjust and re-standardise, if you like, to take account of the COVID and the decrease in traffic going along it. And obviously the issues that there is only one performance indicator that's ever captured in our borough, that DEFRA had, I think, recommended that we also start collecting particulates as part of that, but it wasn't obvious in the conversation that we had as to how this borough is actually going to do it, or through what means other than these personal monitors, for which the strategy is rather confusing in terms of who's to use them and how they're going to be taken forward and what to make of any data that's collected. So I think it's been a difficult year for environmental health, and there have been very short staffed, but I think we're going to have to just keep returning to it as an issue.
Is it on the agenda? Is it?
It is.
Yeah, I agree with you. Any more comments? Right, okay, we just asked to note those reports, yes. So thank you very much for those that attend that meeting. It's a really important meeting for us. Thank you. So that brings us on to item 12 then, on page 92, and that is in-cab technology, and that is Richard. This is to introduce it.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. Hopefully there's a reasonable amount of information in the report, but just to put it in a bit of context, obviously we'll all be aware of the budgetary pressures that the council and the refuse and recycling services under. You know, as we spoke about it earlier this evening, about the staffing pressures that the service is under, and you'll also be aware, of course, that there's quite a bit of housing growth on the horizon that's also going to put pressure on the services. So we're looking at means by which we can improve the efficiency of the service, and obviously we want to try and provide the best service we can to customers. That's one of the reasons why we've been looking at in-cab for some time. It's something that our frontline crews are keen to implement. They see it as being an improvement to their job, to make their job easier. We think it'll improve the lot of our back office staff. We think it'll make our contact centre staff's life much easier, and also, of course, the main thing, we think it'll make the service better for our customers. So that's one of the reasons, the main reasons we're looking into this. There's a health and safety aspect to it, and in-cab does provide route-specific risk assessments, which we simply don't have adequate route-specific risk assessments in a form that can be easily accessed by drivers and crew at the moment, so that's a key element of it. In-cab is a way of making sure that it works with the route optimization software we've already got to plan, as I said, for housing growth, but also to work on service efficiencies and new ways of working to try and make sure that we get as much as we can out of the services that we've got with the budgets we've got. I spoke earlier about staff shortages. This is a way of ensuring that we can assist staff, especially those who aren't familiar with routes and familiar with rounds, familiar with the intricacies of a lot of the ins and outs of the work that's done on rounds on a day-to-day basis to help them. Future development savings we think are absolutely key to this. There are savings identified in the report, but I think the future savings from technology, from in-cab technology are significant, and therefore I've got every expectation that this will more than pay for itself in the future. It will also assist with green waste service. Our cesspool service can be improved, and our trade service offer can be improved through the implementation of in-cab. So those are just a few of the reasons why we're recommending this. I think it'll be a shot in the arm for Lower House Farm and for the refuse and recycling operations, but clearly I'm happy to take any questions that members may have, Chair.
Hayden.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wondered, I thought we'd got something similar to this or something in the cabs already that we already used. So is this an upgrade or is it a new system? And also, just for curiosity, is it a system that you plug in and out like a sat nav? You can move to different lorries, or is it hardwired? And just besides, if it does work, I pick my bin.
Through you, Chair. I mean, the last point that Councillor Phillips makes is a very good one. This is one of the things that we expect to be improved with the result of in-cab is specifically to try and find your bin and empty it, which I presume is the second part of that, not just for our crews to find it, look at it, and then wander off again. So yes, we hope and expect it will improve customer service. Now, it is a new system. We do have trackers on our vehicles, and that's across our fleet, but that's all they do. They simply well, I say all they do. They do more than just measure where the vehicles are. They provide driver behaviour and vehicle behaviour feedback, but they don't do any of the contract and service management that an in-cab system does. It's far more sophisticated than that. And although there is an element of tracking technology in it, because we need to know where our vehicles are at any given time against the rounds that they're supposed to be completing, there's a whole host of additional information that's provided to the drivers, to the crews, to the back office, two-way communication systems, but also the ability for it to speak to our route optimization software so that we know the best way of planning new rounds, additional properties, and all that sort of thing. So yes, it's a new system, but works with our route optimization system that we've already got, but is a significant upgrade on what we do at the moment, Chair.
Oh, sorry. What about the question about, is it portable from one cab to another, or is it sort of hardwired in?
No, it will be hardwired in to the cab. We will have we're proposing 15 units so that every refuse vehicle, cesspool and trade will have an in-cab system on them, hardwired into them. They need to be robust. They need to take a fair amount of hammer. And we don't want them to go missing either. So yes, it's they will be hardwired in, and they'll be fairly robust bits of kit, Chair.
Thanks very much. Is that okay?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Parker, carried.
Thank you, Chair. Richard, just as a question, one of the advantages of this in-cab system is to help with agency staff, temporary staff, short-term staff, people who are coming in on an ad hoc basis. Now, I get that because any in-cab aid is beneficial for somebody who's driving in narrow streets and doesn't know the way around them. And that is obviously a big tick. I'm going to ask a question about our staffing levels and how many of them are agency, and what is our agency bill compared to full-time drivers, along with are we continuing down the agency route, or how much would we be able to save by taking on agency drivers as permanents?
Yes, through you, Chair. I mean, it's a very good question. I mean, we utilise. I mean, it fluctuates, but we utilise, particularly in the holiday season, up to 50% agency at times. It's not that high number on the establishment, but we do rely on agency a lot. We rely on it deliberately in some areas, things like seasonal work, like green waste collections, because that allows us to scale up resource and scale down again as demand fluctuates. But we've always relied on agency to cover absences within our workforce. Although some of our agency staff have worked for us for so long that they're almost permanent members of staff, and they do on a fairly regular basis go from being agency staff to being full-time employees of the council, and that's something that we encourage. We have salary parity at the moment, so there is no difference between employing people through the agency rather than through our direct labour. Although of course there are superannuation, there are pension differences. But I mean, Nigel will be able to give you some more information. But there isn't a huge disparity between what we pay our agency staff and what we pay our full-time staff. But of course, one of the things that's happening at the moment is we are coming under pressure, and so for staffing wise, particularly with HGV drivers, as you all know, Councillor Parker, and therefore. We are finding it increasingly difficult to get people to stay with us for any length of time. And what that means is we tend to rely increasingly on moving our own drivers around. So, for the last few weeks, for example, we've had our supervisors getting into the cabs and driving. We've had our cesspool tanker driver having to drive refuse trucks when he's not doing cesspool emptying. We've had our sweeper driver getting behind the cab of refuse trucks and driving them. And that is inefficient for any number of reasons, but not least because, as you said at the start of your question, they're not familiar with the routes, and it's not just the route; it's where everything is on that route. It's where the bins are. It's who's got the assisted collections. It's where the locked gates are. It's where the communal areas are. It's the key codes for accessing gates. It's the ones that are at the bottom of long drives. It's where the reverses aren't possible. It's the ones where you can't collect on both sides of the road. There are any number of bits of information that actually you need to have at your fingertips to be able to complete these rounds successfully. The other things that increasingly happens is that we need to support crews who are struggling with crews who are finished. And again, that means logging on to a round. Well, at the moment, we do that the old-fashioned way. We phone up and say, where are you? How can I help? That's nowhere near as efficient as being able to allocate parts of a route to other drivers, ones that you can assess as being closest by and most able to help, ones that you know how full they are and whether they can step in and do extra work. And so we're hoping very much that we'll be able to eke out the resources we've got by using this sort of technology.
Nothing changes.
I've got a few questions, Richard, about this. First is about the financing side of it. You talk about the sort of upfront cost in the first year being £87,350, and then an ongoing cost of 38 grand a year thereafter. And then you go on in paragraph 514 to say that you estimate that at least 20 grand would be saved. I'm assuming that's perhaps as a result of reductions in mileage and overtime. So when you equate the 20 grand against the 38 outlay, that looks like we're going to have to budget for an extra 18 grand unless you can firmly identify where other savings are going to come from. So, I mean, I guess you're really asking us to trust your judgment that these savings will make good and there'll be an I&E balance, if not a gain, as a result of this in-cab investment that we're making. I'm all for invest to save, but I can't see the save bit at the moment from this paper actually matching up with what you've put here. My second question is in terms of what lies behind these figures. Clearly a reduction in mileage, the claim that will reduce our carbon emissions. It would be helpful to know by how much you feel this in-cab investment will reduce our carbon emissions, and because we haven't got a figure for the actual reductions in mileage that would accrue as a result of this investment. And then my third question, in terms of this technology, in the past when we've talked about centralisation of refuse disposal and refuse collection, at one point you were talking about the sort of centralisation across the county and the potential for waste collection vehicles, where they're at the borders for a much more kind of strategic view of how waste collection might be done in 3 to 5 years' time, linked with more centralisation of the waste disposal facility, which we've now heavily invested in terms of capital and commitment. And so would this new technology or this particular system that you're proposing is funded actually cross over and be transferable to the systems that the other boroughs are also introducing into their waste collection vehicles? Or are we going to have to look again at reinvesting and respecking the sort of the tech side of all of this if we go down the centralisation of waste collection route on a county-wide basis?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'll take them in the order they were asked, and then you'll probably have to remind me what the third question was by the time I get to it. But I'll take them in the order they were asked. You're absolutely right that we've been very conservative in terms of our estimates and what we'll save, and the £20,000 estimate on direct cashable savings is very much on missed bins alone. We think there will be, and that is down to overtime, it's down to fuel, and it's down to reduced mileage and all the rest of it. We think there will be greater savings than that, far greater savings than that. Far greater savings from day one through increased efficiency. We are already becoming, as I was explaining to Councillor Parker, inefficient because of the very nature of having to do the service in the way we do it at the moment with agency staff and that sort of thing. Fuel prices are going up. Overtime prices will inevitably go up, and therefore, this is an investment to save for future costs increasing. But certainly, we think that £20,000 is a very conservative estimate, and I'm confident. And so I suppose I am asking you to trust me to a certain extent, but I am confident that we will not need to call on the council for any more money to implement in-cab. I think it will more than pay for itself. There are other service improvements that will come about as part of this. I mentioned cesspool empty. I mentioned our trade service, and we are already bringing in far more income from our green waste service than we'd originally budgeted for, and that's one of the reasons why at the moment the position looks a little bit healthier than maybe it might have done. So I'm confident that we can get in more money and save enough money to make sure that we more than cover the cost of implementing this. But far more than that, we've got some serious service pressures coming down the line in terms of household growth and the increase in waste that we're collecting and will collect as a result of that. And this will allow us to absorb that growth for far longer without the need to put on extra rounds. So that in itself will have significant capital and revenue savings moving forward. So we're very confident as a service that yes, this is a sensible use of the council's money and will more than pay for itself. And there are, as I said at the outset, a number of non-cashable but efficiency savings around, contact centre staff, back office functions, and all that sort of thing. That again won't necessarily save money, but will save time and will increase resource and free up capacity within other sections, and help our supervisors out as well. They do a tremendous job down at Lower House Farm, but they certainly do not have as much time as I'd like them to be getting on with some of the additional stuff that I'd like them to be doing in terms of supervising the service, talking to our customers, growing our trade service, and any number of other things that they could be doing. In terms of carbon reduction, I can certainly get back to you in terms of looking at what each mile. I can't off the top of my head think what each mile saved means in terms of carbon. I think I did a note when I was looking at the green waste service to say what reduction that would have in terms of carbon for mileage saved. But I can certainly look at that. But the fact that we will save a significant mileage, both from not going back to missed bins and from increased efficiency from day one, but also in the future, it will have a significant carbon benefit. But I will have a look at that for you. And I'll get some figures to members to explain that a little bit further. More than happy to do that. And in terms of centralisation, all of the borough and district councils in Warwickshire and the county council as well use Web Aspects route optimisation software. They don't all use the same in-cab, and of course some of two of the councils, Stratford and Warwick, are obviously contracted out, and only ourselves and Nuneaton and Rugby are contracted in. So there are elements of disparity between the services that the in-cab services that they use. But what I will say is that because we all use the same route optimization software, we can integrate across between our colleagues at Nuneaton and Rugby and elsewhere. And we will, because you use this based on round data, we can just import other organisations' round data and use that through our own in-cab systems to enable us to work with partner organisations in other local authorities. So the fact that we may use different systems does not stop us being able to integrate across services in the future. So that's very much something that we are making sure that we talk to our local authority colleagues about, so that we've at least all got our data in the right way, because what this uses is unique property reference numbers from council tax records, so and from our land and property gazetteer rather, so that we all record the same information across councils in the same way in terms of properties. Because we use the same route optimization, we'll be able to integrate that across, as long as the data protection allows it, and we're taking advice on that, we'll be able to share the information. So yes, very much so.
Just in terms of kind of mitigating the risks, obviously there is a significant risk there. Is there any scope to either have a trial or look at the savings that other councils have made when they've implemented similar systems, or any learning from elsewhere that we could use to kind of give us more confidence that the figures we've got are accurate?
Yeah, we've done a lot of benchmarking. We've spoken to an awful lot of councils that have implemented this. None of them would go back. All of them are delighted, including their staff. I mean, one of the issues has been the staff sort of consider it to be a spy in the cab and that sort of thing. When you go out to other councils who are using this and talk to the staff who are using it, they wouldn't be without it. It makes their life immensely better in terms of it makes the service more efficient. It reduces the complaints against them. It improves the service for the customer, and so there are improvements for the staff there. And at the moment, anything I can do to improve staff morale down at Lower House Farm after the last 18 months, I'll grab with both hands. But there are definitely service efficiencies. Every council we've spoken to has said that they've these systems more than pay for themselves, both in terms of cash flows I've spoken about and non-cashable savings. And we are in North Warwickshire, we've got unprecedented levels of growth ahead of us in terms of the amount of services going to have to expand, and this will enable us to look, particularly because our route optimization software will be integrated with this into ways in which we can absorb that growth more easily, and that's certainly something that other councils have had the benefit of. So we've been to a number of other authorities that use this or similar systems. And I'm happy to let you have some of the information we've got back from those councils if that will help.
Any other questions? Okay, so I asked a question on this about whether it was our decision or whether it had to go to resources. And my advice is that we can decide on this because it is within it. And I think that if we do agree to this, I would like to add to the recommendation. So the recommendation is that members agree to the purchase and implementation of in-cab technology for all waste and recycling collection vehicles on the condition that it works within the revenue budget as allocated, because that is what is stated in the paper. And indeed, if any further budget is required, it would have to. So. And also, I would suggest that within 6 months of operation, we get a report back to this committee on the financial situation and whether what has been anticipated has actually happened in practice. So, and then finally, on the carbon issue, I would suggest that the climate change group take that up and work with Richard on just what the the carbon reduction is on this particular venture, because hopefully it will contribute significantly to our aim on climate change. So assuming that that's acceptable to members in terms of the recommendation, can I have a proposal, please? Councillor Humphrey, seconded by Councillor Parker. And those in favour, please show. Any against? Right, that is carried. Thank you very much. So finally, I'm afraid we have to say goodbye to our visitors. I have item 13, exclusion of the public press. We have to read this out. To consider whether in accordance with section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, public press be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information defined by Schedule 12A to the Act. So thank you very much for attending, all of you. Nice to see you. Sorry. Look forward to